Tonight, the battle over abortion heads to the nation's highest court. What a Mississippi case could mean for the future of Roe v. Wade. And to mask or not to mask, that is the question.
If you're unvaccinated, we are saying wear a mask.
How the CDC hopes new guidelines will motivate people to get vaccinated. Plus,
they target our civilians by firing rockets indiscriminately into our population center.
the latest on the growing violence between Israel and Hamas. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
The Supreme Court takes up a case pro-life advocates believe sets the stage to target Roe v. Wade. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Thank you for joining us. Well, the High Court opening the door to reconsider the landmark decision making abortion illegal in America. It comes by the way of a constitutional challenge to a Mississippi law.
The court announcing today that it will hear arguments during its next session. That law limits access to abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The case now does not directly challenge the current legal right to an abortion, but it could lay the groundwork for more restrictions. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki today condemned what she called draconian state laws that have posed a, quote, withering and extreme attack against abortion in the last 4 years. Psaki said President Biden is committed to turning Roe into codified law.
The president and the vice president are devoted to ensuring that every American has access to health care, including reproductive health care.
The court likely will hear arguments on the Mississippi case this fall, with a decision coming next spring.
And here now to react, Lila Rose, founder and president of Live Action, a pro-life organization that advocates to end abortion. Lila, welcome. It's so good to have you with us this evening. So this case, what is the significance of the court taking up this particular case and with the new 6-3 conservative majority?
It's hugely significant. First of all, with the 6-3 conservative, as they say, majority in the Supreme Court right now, we could see a tremendous blow to the precedent, the, I think, unconstitutional precedent that was set in Roe v. Wade and in the subsequent court cases over the last few decades. Roe v. Wade, even many pro-abortion legal scholars agree, was poorly decided. Many people today don't even know what is. It continues to change. The ground is very murky, and that's because you can't legislate away an entire group of human beings' rights, the children that are in the womb. I mean, it's time for the law and the Supreme Court to catch up with science, which is crystal clear that human life begins before birth. And that the only difference between a preborn child, whether that child is 10 weeks old, 15 weeks old, or moments before birth, and us, a born human being, is our age and our level of development. So I'm looking forward to how SCOTUS and the Supreme Court will rule on this.
Lila, I want you to get you to respond to this. A federal judge, as you know, in the lower courts in Mississippi overruled the law, saying that the state chose to pass a law it knew was unconstitutional to endorse a decades-long campaign to ask the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. Lila, what's your response to that?
They're wrong. I mean, ultimately, there's an argument to be made that because the Supreme Court decided in Planned Parenthood v. Casey that there's a certain age of viability that a state can ban the killing of a child before or after viability, that they're therefore saying that this Mississippi ban on killing a child after 15 weeks in utero is unconstitutional. And they're wrong. I mean, the Constitution, nowhere in the Constitution does it say there's a right to abortion. Nowhere in the Constitution says that there's a right to kill. Instead, the Constitution, under the 14th Amendment, actually promises equal protection for all human beings and says that no state has the right to deprive the right to life of any of its citizens. So if we acknowledge science that human life begins before birth, those rights just should extend to children before birth, just like we extend them to the children after birth. So I'm looking forward to see the Supreme Court chip away at the unjust and unconstitutional, quite frankly, precedent that the past Supreme Court has set that I think was very politically motivated and not based on the Constitution.
All right, Lila Rose with Live Action. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, to mask or not to mask, that is the question Americans are facing after the CDC released its new guidance.
That guidance allowing people who are fully vaccinated to shed their masks in most settings. CBN White House correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now. Eric, the revised standards have created some confusion, making some people leery of no longer donning their masks.
Yeah, John and Jenna, the confusion is certainly understood considering the fact that some states and businesses are still requiring masks despite the latest CDC guidance. Add to that the fact that these new rules essentially work on the honor system, plus some are questioning why the rules changed so quickly.
Today, for the first time since the pandemic began, pandemic cases are down in all 50 states. Now it's time to get your shot.
The president pushing unvaccinated Americans to get their shots, noting that 60% of all Americans have received at least one shot. That encouragement followed the CDC changing its guidelines regarding those fully vaccinated being able to remove their masks in most scenarios. It was an abrupt about-face from previous guidance. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said on ABC's This Week, the rules changed because the science changed.
I told the American people I'd deliver the science as soon as we had it.
It's good to be on vacation, not have to worry about wearing a mask.
But even fully vaccinated Americans shouldn't ditch their masks yet, because where they are may be slow to change. Despite the new guidance, 22 states still have some kind of statewide mask mandate in place. Businesses are also varying in how they adopt the new guidance. Walmart, Costco, and Trader Joe's among those allowing customers to go maskless. Home Depot and Target, however, joined several companies keeping mask requirements in place. Confusing.
I would imagine within a period of just a couple of weeks, you're going to start to see significant clarification of some of the actually understandable and reasonable questions that people are asking.
While a third of Americans are fully vaccinated, the other 2/3 are not. And some of them not only still refuse to get vaccinated, they also are opposed to wearing masks. There's concern the new guidance provides an honor system that emboldens that segment to go wherever they want, maskless, putting others at risk, especially children and the immunocompromised.
You're empowered, if you are not vaccinated, to wear a mask. So it is less about the honor system. You don't have to trust the person next to you has been vaccinated if you have not been vaccinated. If you wear a mask, the guidance is saying that that provides protection.
Still, the nation's largest nurses union is condemning the mask rollback, saying it puts frontline workers at risk. John and Jenna, back to you.
All right, Eric, thank you. And CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson joins us now for more. Lori, so many questions about when to wear a mask, who should wear a mask. Is there a simple way to answer some of these?
Well, the simplest way is to determine where you're going and what you'll be doing and make the judgment call based on that. For example, a lot of businesses are still requiring masks for everyone. I was so excited about getting a massage this weekend because I'm fully vaccinated and I really didn't want to get a massage wearing my mask. And so I told the lady at the massage place, I'm fully vaccinated, so can I go without my mask? And she said, no, I'm sorry. You still have to wear your mask. That's our policy here. And I said, okay, just wondering, can I have someone give me a massage who's been fully vaccinated? And she said, again, sorry, we are not allowed to ask people whether they are our employees, whether they've been vaccinated. That's a violation of HIPAA rules, and you're not really allowed to get that information from them either. So that's a little sidebar too, that it's people are not required, and you are not required to tell people your medical history, and that includes whether you've been vaccinated. So it's kind of, we need to take this on a case-by-case basis. Another little personal anecdote, I went to a restaurant and ate inside, and the restaurant did not require people to wear masks. So it just kind of varies from place to place.
Lori, I want to hang out with you and go get massages. Speaking of cases.
Yeah, go to a restaurant. I had a great weekend.
Let's do it. Johns Hopkins reported flu cases are dramatically low this season. Lori, how much have we benefited from COVID precautions like face coverings and social distancing?
So much, and that is a great point. Flu cases and flu deaths were practically non-existent this past year, this past flu season. And honestly, every year I do tragic stories about people who die from the flu, children who die from the flu every year. And this year it has been practically non-existent. So we know that the flu and the coronavirus are similar in that they are spread the same way, and that is from person to person. So yes, I fully expect to see next flu season a lot of people masking up to prevent against getting the flu.
Lori, where does the United States stand on herd immunity?
Right. So herd immunity is kind of a vague term. It basically means when enough people are immune that the virus really doesn't have anywhere to go. And that's the goal, herd immunity. But what exactly percentage is herd immunity? And it varies from expert to expert. Some people say 70% of the population needs to be immune, 80%. So we know, so a lot of people think that maybe we have already reached herd immunity because remember, Jenna, we could reach immunity in one of two ways: vaccination, or if you had the coronavirus and recovered from it, you're immune. And we know about 10% of verified cases, but the question is how many people had coronavirus this past year or the year before and didn't know it?
All right, CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Lori.
The deadly violence between Israeli forces and Hamas militants has entered a second week. So far, U.S. efforts to quell the attacks haven't made a dent diplomatically. Still, the White House says it's the tactic the administration will continue to employ.
The president also did 2 calls over the weekend. In those calls, he stressed the need for Hamas to cease firing rockets into Israel and affirmed again, Israel's right to defend itself against terrorist attacks. We want to bring an end to the violence. We want to de-escalate the situation on the ground. The role we feel we can do that through, the most effective way we feel we can do that is through quiet and intensive diplomacy. And that is what our focus is on at this point in time. But we share an objective of de-escalating the circumstances on the ground.
Israel is standing by its right to defend itself against Hamas's deadly missiles aimed at civilians. But some in the U.S. are critical of the Jewish state's use of retaliatory force.
Former Israeli Ambassador Ron Dermer is putting it this way for Americans, asking, what would you do if rockets were raining down on your cities?
That's a good question. We spoke with CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell about the escalating violence and how he thinks the media is making it worse for Israel.
In 1 week, Hamas and other terror groups have fired more than 3,000 rockets into Israel, putting up to 4 million Israelis in bomb shelters day or night. Ambassador Ron Dermer wonders how Americans would respond.
I would ask Americans who are watching this unfold in Israel, think about this. Our army is fighting this war and surgically going after the terrorists not thousands of miles away from our shores. It's right in our backyard when our own population is in bomb shelters. So imagine 150, 200 million Americans sitting in bomb shelters. What do you think they'd want their army to do in order to get at the terrorists who are firing rockets at them?
Many of Hamas's rockets have hit towns in south and central Israel, including its second largest city, Tel Aviv. Dermer blames Hamas for a double war crime.
They target our civilians by firing rockets indiscriminately into our population center, hoping to kill as many Israelis as possible. But the other thing they do is they embed their terrorist infrastructure in civilian areas. So they place their weapons next to schools, next to mosques, next to hospitals, and they even took over, military intelligence of Hamas took over a building where journalists are because they want to use these people as human shields. Well, these are legitimate military targets, and even though they're legitimate military targets, we will take the steps necessary to keep civilians out of harm's way.
Israel has taken out large towers inside Gaza City and large parts of Hamas's war machine, but with relatively few casualties in light of Israel's massive bombing campaign.
Because we warned them. We actually call people. We then fire a weapon that sort of knocks at the top of the building, telling people, get out of the building. We give them the time to leave, and then we take out the building.
The Associated Press is outraged over Israel destroying the building that housed its offices, even though Israel reportedly showed evidence to the U.S. that Hamas worked out of that building. Dermer says Hamas is manipulating the media.
Part of Hamas's strategy is to turn the media into enablers for what they're doing. How does it work? They will fire rockets at us. Then when we respond to that rocket fire in those civilian areas and unfortunately make a mistake or there's collateral damage, civilians die, then Hamas wants the entire world to blame Israel. The media should report on everything, but they should lay the blame squarely where it belongs, on Hamas. And if they understand Hamas, that the media will not enable them.
Dermer says Hamas's strategy is to confuse the situation.
They want to say both sides are at fault. Both sides are not at fault. On one side, you have a democracy called Israel that values human life, the lives of our own citizens, and also the lives of our enemy civilians, those who they are using as human shields. On the other side, you have a terror organization that glorifies death, that is trying to kill as many Israelis as possible and doesn't care about their own people. They actually will use them in their propaganda wars. And I don't think any moral equivalency should be made between the two.
During the current conflict, Dermer says U.S. evangelical support is vital.
I hope that Christians will make their voices heard now. I hope that they will call their representatives, tell them how important it is to stand with Israel. Because I can tell you something, Chris, and you've seen this around the world. Those people who are the opponents of Israel, they're in the streets. They're waving their flags. They're demonizing Israel. And it's important that the friends of Israel go out there and make clear that they stand with Israel.
According to Dermer, what lies ahead is a determined Israeli campaign to degrade Hamas's ability to wage war, so that this conflict does not repeat itself anytime soon. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
All right, thank you, Chris. Up next, Franklin Graham talks Trump 2024. Hear why he stands by the former president and what he said about Mr. Trump's moral example.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Reverend Franklin Graham says it might be tough for President Trump to run again in 2024. The heavyweight evangelical leader making news in an interview with Axios on HBO. Graham saying everything will depend on his health at the time. Graham also explained why he supported the former president despite some of his moral failings.
People say, well, Franklin, how can you defend him when he's lived such a sordid life? I never said he was the best example of the Christian faith. He defends the faith, and I appreciate that very, very much.
CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody joins us now to discuss. David, what about this interview? Franklin Graham making a lot of news over the weekend and in his defense of Trump, speaking for probably many evangelicals who like how Trump defended their faith.
Yeah, it's not surprising, and it's consistent with not only what Franklin Graham has said in the past, but what evangelicals feel in totality about President Trump. He's not going to win Boy Scout of the Year. As a matter of fact, I think he'd come in dead last. But beyond that, look, he is defending the faith, so to speak. In other words, what does that mean, defending the faith? It means Judeo-Christian, time-honored, traditional biblical principles that many conservatives believe in. And so that's what Donald Trump did. But also, he was a fighter. And I think people, Christians who feel like this has been a society slouching towards Gomorrah, if you will, wanted to see someone get up there and fight. And they were done with the Mitt Romneys of the world who want that genteel politics. They weren't going to have any of that. They wanted someone to fight for them, and that's what Trump did.
David, Reverend Graham also made some comments that is gaining some headlines. He talked about it possibly being tough for Trump to run in 2024 based on his age and potential health. How significant is that, David? It almost sounded like an unendorsement.
Well, yeah, it was kind of head-scratching to me, honestly. That was, I think, the most interesting part of the interview. I'm not quite sure why he would say that exactly. I mean, I'm not quite sure if Mike Allen did the follow-up exactly on that. But look, I can tell you this, the sources that I'm talking to close to Trump and in Mar-a-Lago are not talking at all about his health. He's fine. Yeah, does he have McDonald's quite often? Sure. He likes his occasional cheeseburger. But beyond that, he's lost 15 pounds. He's probably in the best health he's ever been in. But beyond all that, look, health with Donald Trump has never been the issue. The guy's got stamina. I mean, he would run circles around all of us.
David, though, do you think this was a polite or a soft way for Franklin Graham to say that he's moving on from President Trump and would like to see someone else?
Well, Jenna, I'd like to say, as I look kind of into the camera like this, that's a very astute observation. However, I will say that while it may be possible, look, Franklin Graham usually doesn't beat around the bush. So this idea that, you know, if he really didn't want Trump to run again, you sense he would say it. However, I don't think he would say it now, and that's why he's maybe just laying some groundwork out there, and we'll see what happens when we get closer to 2024.
Yeah, we will see. David, so there's new reporting from the Daily Mail and The Hill that former President Trump, that he will start holding rallies as soon as next month. What are you hearing about that, David?
I'm hearing the same thing. I can tell you that it sounds like it's a go. The question is where and when. But of course, the details in Trump land typically change quite often, multiple times. So anything I reported today might be different tomorrow. But the bottom line is, yeah, I think you're going to have the rallies start very, very soon. Definitely June.
All right. CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. Thanks, David.
Thanks, guys.
The pipeline may be pumping, but that doesn't mean all drivers can fill up at the pump. A gas shortage update after this.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Fuel is freely flowing again through the Colonial Pipeline, but some gas pumps along the East Coast are still empty. The biggest shortages are in Georgia, the Carolinas, and Washington, D.C., according to Gas Buddy. Some 83% of stations here in the nation's capital still without gas. The Colonial Pipeline is responsible for supplying 45% of the East Coast fuel. A cyber attack forced it to close down for 6 days, causing a panic up and down the East Coast.
Is not the result of the Colonial Pipeline being shut down, rather news of the pipeline and how that fed fear that there wouldn't be enough gasoline. Americans started to hoard and panic.
The surge in demand is also boosting prices. AAA reporting the national average for a gallon of gas is up to just over $3 a gallon.
Still ahead, from fighting fires to pacifiers, how these firefighters are on a new assignment together.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Finally tonight, from fighting fires together to becoming fathers together, the Orlando Fire Department has a little bit of what's called a baby boom on its hands, Jenna.
In just a matter of months, 7 firefighters have welcomed new additions to their families. 4 baby boys and 3 girls have joined not just their families at home, but the larger firefighting community. Moms and babies all doing well, and their first responder dads are supporting each other in their new 24-hour assignments. The fire department says it's just a matter of time before these new latest recruits begin to gear up. You know, they're a little bit of an anomaly. I think I've seen that, you know, in COVID, the baby births are down, actually.
Well, not in this case.
Yeah,
Thanks
not
for
in
watching.
Orlando. All right, thanks for joining us.